James Wilks, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers podcast today.
Yeah, great for having me. Glad to be here.
Do you have a moment of gratitude to share with us and the listeners?
I'm very grateful for my wife, Alicia. She's been very supportive through this whole process and raising our kids and everything. Very grateful for that.
Without that support, I don't know where we'd be, right? It's crazy. It's so important in our lives.
Definitely. Are your children plant-based as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So my daughter's never eaten any animal foods, and my son had eaten just a little bit before we got on this journey.
Lucky. That's kind of, our son had a couple of years. Our daughter didn't have too long before she became vegetarian. So but I kind of think, oh my gosh, how smart and how talented they would be if they would have been, from birth, plant-based. What little edge they would have had.
Yeah, and also I also have 3 stepchildren. One is a lot older and doesn't live with us, but the 2 that live with us, Annie, who's just turned 19, she's been plant-based for a long time now, and then my stepson Joseph, who got into bodybuilding actually and went plant-based after he met Nimai Delgado, one of the characters from the documentary. He's put on like 40 pounds of muscle since going plant-based, and he's only 17. So.
Oh, wow. I expect that we'll be hearing a lot of those kinds of stories in just days. Yeah.
So we have a lot to talk about. We know we have a big movie premiere coming out soon, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But before we get into that, and we gave a little bit of an introduction, so people heard a little bit about you already, but you're a mixed martial artist. You were an Ultimate Fighter champion, participated in the UFC. What got you into martial arts in the first place? How did that come about?
My family's always sort of had a sort of fighting in their blood. My uncle was a very prestigious karate fighter back in the day, and then my grandfather was quite the fighter. He was in World War II. He'd actually faked his birth certificate so that he could get into the army early. And then my dad was also into martial arts. But then when I was younger, I really watched a lot of the Bruce Lee films, and that really inspired me as well.
So when I was doing martial arts, I had about 6 full-on years in my younger days. When we looked at karate, the way that karate is today, yes, it's fighting, but it's more like points fighting, and we didn't look at it as the same kind of art. I did something called kudoki, so it was a mix between kujitsu and kung fu. So the type of fighting is very different. So in your career as a martial artist, do you look at any of the other arts as less than or not as what it used to be? The difference between traditional and just commercial?
Yeah, I think things have become a lot, commercialized now. Like originally there was no belt system that was sort of created, especially in the Western world, to get people to keep paying and keep students coming. And also, various arts, they all have some usefulness. But the thing is, you've only got a certain limited amount of time in a week to train. So you want to spend that time training in the most effective arts for combat.
So the type of training that you did and you continue to do and teach takes a lot of time and energy, and it's very physical. And the way that you fuel your body is very important in being able to sustain and maximize your performance. When you were the Ultimate Fighter champion, were you eating very differently then than you were much later in your career? And I'd like to know what the nutrition was like for you at that time and your competitors, and how that influences your performance.
Yeah, I mean, so just to clarify, in the UFC, there's the champion of the weight category, but what I did is I won the Ultimate Fighter. So I just want to clarify that for the listeners. But so when I was fighting in the UFC and I won the Ultimate Fighter, I was sticking mainly to sort of a traditional athletic diet. So I was doing extra lean chicken, extra lean turkey, brown rice, broccoli, that sort of thing. And then at one point I did go sort of looking at the paleo diet as well a little bit. And so obviously nutrition is extremely important. When I got injured and I started researching into recovery into nutrition for optimal recovery and athletic performance. And that's when I came across a study about the Roman gladiators. They analyzed the bones and they could tell they were eating almost exclusively, if not completely, plants. And I thought, well, that can't be true. And that's when I really started looking into this, into nutrition very seriously. And unfortunately, I had, there's another injury that I had. I broke my neck, which was obviously quite unfortunate. And so I was unable to continue fighting. So I did train for a fight in the UFC after I switched, but I never actually competed being plant-based. So, wish that I had, because I really think that the nutrition can give you a significant advantage.
Do you find that in the mixed martial arts, nutrition is taken very seriously and more of those athletes are now leaning towards eating more plants?
They certainly are, especially, in the UFC, there's more plant-based fighters now, and it doesn't necessarily mean go vegan or go vegetarian. I mean, I eat, all plants, but, the more plants people can eat, the better they seem to do, certainly with health, and also there's biological mechanisms that indicate that it improve performance. I think, unfortunately, a lot of, not just in the mixed martial arts, but in athletics in general, I don't think people really take the majority of athletes don't take their nutrition seriously enough. And I really think that it's key to really focus on nutrition to optimize your performance and get the best out of not just every day when you're training, but also your recovery, and then also your longevity within the sports career as well. So I really think people should be paying a little bit more attention to what they're putting in their body.
So what do you mean by that? Do you mean that people are just following the lean meat, high vegetable, like they're just following what is out there and what they think they know, and not taking time to go dig deeper on their own? Or when they're not training for a fight or when they're recovering, they're not putting the best foods into their body?
I think it's a combination of things. Some people are sort of going whatever the sort of fad diet is at the time, whereas whether it's that extra lean, sort of low fat diet with the extra lean chicken and turkey, or the paleo diet or the keto diet. So people do go with fads, but then a lot of athletes are just really eating a whole bunch of really bad junk food. One of the athletes in the film, they were saying their whole team got Popeyes or Kentucky Fried Chicken before the game. I mean, no one can really think that that's going to optimize health or performance. So it's shocking, really, that people aren't paying as much attention to their nutrition as they should be.
Well, that starts at the peewee level, right? Like that starts when you have 6-year-olds on teams and you go out and you play hockey or lacrosse or whatever your sport is. And then for team's sake, you go out to the pub that's in the same community center and you order all these chicken wings and you order all these pizzas. So it's a culture that kids are learning from a young age. I remember when our son was on a soccer team and we had to bring a snack. Each parent was responsible for bringing an after play snack each week. And when we brought dairy-free granola bars and orange slices and watermelon and whatever, and everybody else is bringing chips and popsicles and juice boxes. And we were trying to find something that kids would actually eat, but that fell into our value system and fell into our understanding of what the body needs to recover after, even if it's just a little 45-minute, peewee soccer game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think people are it's not just the animal foods, it's also the heavily refined plant foods as well, like the sugar and the white flour, and it's sort of addictive, right? So it's a shame. People need to be eating more plants, and they need to be eating more whole plants in the, fruits, vegetables, nuts, whole grains, that sort of thing.
There's a wide range mentality when it comes to nutrition, and a lot of athletes that I come into contact with kind of have the thought process of, well, I'm doing all this exercise, I'm burning off all these calories, I could eat whatever I want because I'm not going to put on weight. And they see that on the outside, but they don't see what they're doing to themselves on the inside of their body. And the other piece is, oh, I got to get my protein in. And it's an age-old question now, like, where do you get your protein from if you're eating a plant-based diet? And there's tons of sources. But I wanted to get your take on the misconception of protein when it comes to building strength and developing athletes.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you talked about, on the outside you might look good, doesn't mean that you're optimizing the inside. Just for example, if someone's a smoker, if you looked at a picture of a smoker, they might look healthy on the outside, but what's going on in the lungs on the inside, right? And also that affects their arteries and so forth. And it's the same with food. You can be really lean, And there's all sorts of things that can make you lean. You could have a cocaine habit, you could have a parasite, just because you're on a diet that makes you lean doesn't mean that that's healthy or optimizing performance. And so people think of food as like the macros, like protein and, carbohydrates and fat. And then they think of, fruits and vegetables, like maybe offering a little bit of the minerals and the vitamins. But there's a lot more to it than that. So food can be anti-inflammatory or inflammatory, and that can affect your recovery, that can affect blood flow. The better blood flow you have, the more oxygen, the more nutrients you're getting to your muscles, so you're going to perform better. You're going to be able to lift more, you're going to be able to run faster, you're going to be able to cycle longer, whatever it is that you want to do. And even if you've just got a day job, you're not an athlete, you still want energy, optimize your energy to work at the office, to mentally focus, to play with your kids at home, whatever it is. So, what you put in your body is really important. And then the second thing you talked about was, the protein. Well, all protein originates in plants, and animals are just the middlemen. And they're basically doing people a disservice because they're robbing the food of the fiber and the phytonutrients. They're concentrating the pesticides and the toxic heavy metals. And then they're also creating these inflammatory compounds like new 5GC and AGEs and TMAO and this sorts of thing, which are causing inflammation, which are damaging the arteries, and again, in the short term, affecting your performance, whether that's athletic or even sexual performance. And in the long term, those same biological mechanisms impact, the major chronic diseases, so heart disease, cancer, diabetes, that sort of thing.
So what would be great sources of plant-based proteins for these people that are looking to move away from animal products, still develop strength and improve performance in all areas of their lives? If protein was that important to them, right?
Yeah. So, all plants have contain protein, and all plants contain all of the essential amino acids in varying proportions. But there are foods that are higher in protein based on its weight and calorie. And so, if people are concerned about getting enough protein, they should be eating, legumes, which is beans, peas, lentils, or and then also nuts and seeds. And so those things really are quite dense in protein. Now, even vegetables like broccoli are very high in protein, but the issue with that is to get significant amounts of broccoli, you'd have to eat this much.
The size of the tree behind you.
Yeah. Exactly. So, still you're getting a significant percentage of protein from broccoli or something like that. But I wouldn't be eating that to get most of my proteins, or legumes, peas, lentils. And then the other thing is, simple switches that people can make. Instead of drinking cow's milk, you can have soy milk, or there's lots of other types of milks made from plants. So there's simple switches where you can switch out. And some people, do a whey protein powder where you can make a simple switch. If you feel you need protein powder, just switch to a plant-based one like pea or hemp and that sort of thing.
So what is your opinion on protein powder and isolating the protein from the foods?
Yeah, and I think, first of all, things are healthy, if something's not healthy or unhealthy, it's always compared to what, right? So if people are taking a whey protein powder, they're going to be better off taking a plant-based one. And then depending on, how much you train, the amount of calories you eat, what your goals are, then it can come into play and be a useful thing to add in. So for example, a good example would be if someone is 40 pounds overweight and they have an office job, but they only go to the gym 3 days a week for 45 minutes, right? So they need to be in a caloric deficit, okay? But because you're in a caloric deficit, your protein, your percentage of protein is going to remain the same if you're just eating food. And so your the amount of protein that you eat, if you're in a caloric deficit, in order to lose body fat, is going to come down. So the amount of protein is coming down. And so that if your goal was to maximize muscle as fast as possible, I'm not saying that's the healthiest thing to do, right? Even, playing football or fighting in the UFC isn't the healthiest thing to do. But let's say you've got the summer coming up and you want to lose 40 pounds of body fat, but you also want to gain or maintain muscle, then that might be a case where protein powder might be useful in that goal. Again, not saying that that's the healthiest thing to do to even gain as much muscle as fast as possible. But then, if you're an endurance athlete and you're burning 5,000 calories a day, or you don't need to lose a ton of body fat and you're just lifting, then you can get all the protein you need, from whole foods.
Definitely. And sometimes if you're in a rush and you are that endurance athlete, you need to get a certain amount of calories down so that you don't wither away to nothing. And you can't just sit there eating food all day, all the time. But so, people say to me, what do you think about, they ask me the same question, what do you think about protein powders? And I'm like, it depends, which protein powder we're talking about, but more importantly, it depends on who this person is and what's the purpose and what's the goal. But whole foods come first most of the time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Focused on, to me, the split is plant and animal, eat as many plants as possible, preferably completely. And then within that, there's the, whole or sort of refined mix and trying to use as many whole plants as possible. And so to us, it's not all or nothing. We like to say all or something, whether it's, all or something in terms of plant foods, and then all or something in terms of whole plant foods as well.
It's good. That's good. Good help right there. A lot of the athletes that we work with, the students that I work with, are always concerned about calories, protein. They like to break down their macronutrients, and sometimes I question why they do that. I don't know that it's always so necessary. It's more important to eat whole foods more often, less processed, the better. And they'll see that their body will recover a lot faster and be able to perform a lot better. When you teach your students in the military, do you have the opportunity to talk nutrition with them?
Yeah, in the last couple of years, I've certainly brought nutrition into, when I'm talking to these folks. And so I think people are starting to pay more attention now, and they are interested. In the military, actually, has probably taken the biggest single interest in the documentary to date. So we've been doing screenings at military universities and bases. We've screened at the Defense Health Headquarters. And the film actually, it's the first film that's ever been accredited by the Defense Health Agency, which is the organization that oversees nutrition for the Department of Defense. Because, they're concerned about warfighter effectiveness. So that's the term they use. They want their soldiers to be optimizing their performance, when they're out on the battlefield. And then also the healthcare costs that the military goes through is astronomical. And also, in order to retrain a soldier that can't pass its physical because they're eating a bunch of junk food, that's extremely expensive as well. So in terms of a performance side and a cost saving side, the military is extremely interested in nutrition and the film as well. And in fact, the Special Operations Medical Association has endorsed the film. So they're looking at the scientific credibility of the claims in the film and all the citations, and that's got a lot of buy-in there.
I really hope that does make an impact. We have here in Canada, I don't know if you've heard of it, there's something big going on in terms of a vegan soldier who is not being offered vegan food. They're basically being able to take away whatever is being offered to everybody else, but they're not being given anything to supplement that, to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients that they need to be getting. And it's become a huge deal here and a huge lawsuit. Is there support for your students who are vegan or want to become vegan?
We don't directly have, a say in what they're eating, obviously, but we are making recommendations and trying to help. And it really is starting to shift, in the military community. There's more and more bases that are now offering plant-based meals at every single meal. So I think in the next year or so, you're going to really see that grow.
So the documentary you mentioned is called The Game Changers, and it's got a global premiere of September 16th, which is coming up really soon. I'm really excited about it. And I really do think that it's going to make an enormous impact, specifically on the younger athletic population, in my opinion. And as a phys ed teacher, I talk about the importance of plant-based nutrition with my students all the time. And they're always looking for role models that are at the professional level, that are celebrities, because I'm not good enough for them, of course. But they're always looking for more. And I really think this is a documentary that's going to be able to deliver and make a huge impact in helping the younger people understand the importance of nutrition when it's directly related to their performance. And I guess, thank you for getting involved in this. How did you get involved in this? And what is your role with this whole documentary?
Yeah, so I was training for a fight, and I was sparring with a future heavyweight champion in the UFC. So we had about 70, 80 pounds on me. And, I was like, I think 180 at the time, because I had a fight in 2 weeks. I was cutting down weight. And so anyway, we were sparring, and basically I tore ligaments in both of my knees, and thought, I've got 6 months where I really can't do much. What should I do? And that's when I really started digging into nutrition and came across the study about the Roman gladiators, which I mentioned earlier. And that's when I really started going on this path. I was sort of interviewing the head of nutrition at Harvard, the head of anthropology at Harvard, world's leading nutrition researchers. And so as I started doing this, I thought, I really felt like I've been lied to by the industry, and even like not that I was being lied to by my parents, but they just believed when I was younger that you needed meat to be strong and healthy. And so that message has been driven into me since I was a child, and I felt like I'd been lied to. So I felt like I had to make a documentary. So that's how it got started. Bought a used camera off of Craigslist. I went on YouTube, learned how to do the 3-point lighting, and I knew that footage might not get used, but I knew that it could, we could create a sizzle reel or something to get on board. And then fortunately, my partner, the other producer, Joseph Pace, he has been instrumental in getting this film made. He was a screenwriter before, and he's actually been plant-based now for 30 years. And unfortunately, he can beat me in every sport other than martial arts. But so, between us, we got this film made, and it took a long time, but we got some big names on board, and, the best researchers and the best graphics, the best editors, the best camera people. And so that's sort of how it all got started. So I'm also, the story in the film follows my journey. I'm the narrator, and then I'm also, one of the two producers.
So about a year ago, we had Dr. James Loomis on our podcast, and he had mentioned the Game Changers movie, and he was super excited because he was in it, and we were excited to see it, but there was no timeline set. And then we spoke with Dr. Dean Ornish, who was on our podcast, and he talked about, I don't want to go there right now. Well, he talked about the erections and ED and the importance of nutrition, and he mentioned the film as well. And Dr. Greger was on our show, and I know he's involved in there as well. And this is coming out September 16th. And is it global? Is it a global release?
Yeah, so it's a global theatrical release, over 1,000 theaters around the world. I'm not sure on the exact number, but September 16th, it's a one-night only event in theaters. And that also includes 22 minutes of bonus content, which is never before seen, footage, extended interviews, surprise appearances. And James Cameron actually runs through that with his interview. It's sort of, that's the thread. Because we originally thought we might put other things in the film, and other than sports and health. And so we interviewed some people like James Cameron. Unfortunately, that didn't get to make the film, but it's in the bonus content. And so that's one night only. And then unfortunately, we're not able to say where it goes after that contractually, but rest assured it will be completely wide and available online, at some point after that.
What are some of the other big names that you have that are featured in this documentary, so that people that are listening right now want to get really excited to hear information from these people? So
Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously a very big name, talks about how the meat industry, it's really about the marketing. It's not based on reality. And he's really encouraging people to cut down on their meat consumption. I'm just trying to think. So we feature very briefly Novak Djokovic, the #1 ranked tennis player in the world. Chris Paul, 9-time NBA All-Star. So they just sort of mention the film as these other higher end athletes that are making these changes. And then also we interviewed Lewis Hamilton, the 5-time Formula 1 champion. And he's also, all of those folks are executive producers on the film as well. So really helping the film get made or, get out to the world.
So I have a question. I hope it doesn't put you on the spot. So the cast is amazing. There is a bigger group of males than females, of course. So, I guess what is behind this? Is it because there are more professional male athletes out there than women? Is it because there's less women at that caliber who are plant-based? Why is that?
Yeah, no, actually, as soon as you said, I hope it doesn't put me on the spot, I knew what question you were going to ask, actually. And so
I'm not criticizing.
No. So there's some amazing athletes in the film. So Dottie Bausch, who's the 8-time USA national cycling champion and Olympic gold medalist. Morgan Mitchell, who's the 2-time Australian champion and Olympian in the 400 meters, now doing 800 meters. So there are some amazing women in the film. But the reason that it is male focused is because the myth is that you need meat to get protein to be strong and healthy. But there's actually an underlying myth that we realized, and I felt it myself, which is that real men eat meat. And so that's one of the underlying myths. So, only 2 out of 10 plant-based eaters are male. So, the myth isn't as strong. There's not the same stigma. Typically, obviously I'm talking generally here, if a female says I'm going to have a tofu salad with her friends, like, oh, good for you, you're trying to stay in shape and stay trim. But if a guy says I'm having a tofu salad and his buddies are eating steak and potatoes, there's usually some pushback. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And so it just it was a thing that I'd felt personally that was driving me, not only as an athlete, but as a man, that I felt like I had to eat meat. So we just addressed that, and therefore, for example, there's the scene with the erectile function that you talked about. We take college athletes, put them on a plant-based meal one day and an animal-based the other day, and there's actually a device called the Rigiscan, which can measure erectile function, rigidity, circumference, duration, and there's a significant difference there, and people can watch the film to see the results. But this real men eat meat myth, I think, had to be dispelled, and so that is why there's more men in the film. And we filmed so many. We thought we'd fit a lot more people in the film than we did. So there's some amazing other female athletes like Cara Lang, who's the national soccer player for Canada, youngest person to ever score a goal in the Olympics for soccer. Tia Blanco, the 2-time world surfing champion, who's actually featured in the bonus content on September 16th. Just some amazing female athletes. But I think being our first film that we made, we thought we'd fit a lot more people in than we could. So we actually filmed 50 additional people that didn't make the film. So we've got 600 hours of footage that you've got to make down, really, for people to watch it, to less than 90 minutes. So 600 hours down to 86 minutes is what we did. And so we've got that footage. Some of it's in the bonus content. And then we'll keep putting out those interviews over time and on the web and on social media and using that footage. But there's just as many incredible female athletes as there are males in the world. It's just, that was the reason for making it the way we did.
Understandable.
Makes perfect sense, right? So for people that are listening that want to get to the show on September 16th, they can go to their local box office. It's in most cinemas. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in the US, for example. It's in all of it's the major chains, so AMC and Regal and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then all people have to do, the best way is probably to go to our website and click on Get Tickets, because then they can put in their zip code or their postcode wherever they live in the world, and it'll show the nearest theater. So the website's gamechangersmovie.com, and they just click on Get Tickets.
That's great. And we're going to put that link in our show notes at planttrainers.com/320. And this episode's going to come out the week before September 16th. So people will have time to grab their tickets and get to see the show. If they're listening to this and it's after September 16th and they want to reach out to you or get more information on where the movie's going to be playing, they could obviously go to the website. Is there anywhere else that you would like them to go to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the website should have all the places that they can get the film whenever they're watching this, but also, we're on social. So we're on Game Changers Movie on Facebook and Instagram, and then GC Movie on Twitter. And then we'll also have a Facebook sort of online community where people can ask questions and that sort of thing. And then when the film comes out on September 16th, we're also putting a new website up, which will have tons of resources. So recipes, shopping tips, eating out tips, all the FAQs, all the science and showing the performance. So they can check that out as a resource as well.
That sounds great. And I would love if everybody can tag Game Changers, but also tag us if they're going to the film, and take a selfie of themselves with their friends out there and get that buzz going, because we need this for the movement. So the more people post on social media, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, I'll be doing that for sure. I'm going to be going. I already have my ticket for September 16th. I'm in Toronto. I'm going to the Cineplex where it's playing in Markham. And I'm really expecting this documentary to have as big of an impact as Forks Over Knives did in 2011. I think it's that caliber of an impact that we're looking for, and that I really think it's going to make that impact, especially on the younger population. So thank you so much, James, for taking the time to be here with us and for putting this documentary together. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great being on.
Great. And for anybody listening who's like, why does Adam have a ticket and not Shoshana? Is because there's not enough women in the movie. It's not because of that. I'll be on an airplane. So if you could somehow get it on my flight from Vegas, then I can watch it then.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Thanks.